Happy Thursday, everybody. Welcome into another edition of Morning JOX. Conrad, Van Order, and Damian Mitchell here with you today as we continue to get you set for week 3 around the college football season. You've got Alabama hosting Wisconsin in an SEC Big Ten matchup in Tuscaloosa this week, and you got Auburn hosting South Alabama on the Plains this weekend as they get ready. And both of these teams face their final tests before they kick off SEC play, with Alabama taking on Georgia in a couple weeks and Auburn taking on Oklahoma next week. So a lot for us to continue to get into with you today as we continue to speculate and break down some of the biggest matchups coming up this weekend, of which there are many. But we need to start off a little different today, I think. And I don't like talking about politics on the show. I'm not a super political person in terms of, I don't know, I feel like I keep a lot of those thoughts to myself. And we're here to talk about football, right? We love football. We love sports. And that's why you tune into this show. That's why we show up every morning and do this show. But I think after yesterday and with today being the day that it is, I just ask that if you haven't already, I would ask that you would find the time or the place in your heart to say a prayer or just take a moment, and think about Charlie Kirk. And even if he's somebody that you did not respect his opinions or his viewpoints on certain things, I think yesterday was a little bit of a wake-up call for a lot of people, because it showed you a lot of the evil that's in the world and a lot of how we've just come so far to the point now where you don't even get sympathy for people that are assassinated in front of thousands of people. And the fact that we all had capabilities where many of us probably within 5 minutes of that happening had seen a live close-up video of that happening on our cell phones that we carry in our pockets every day. And we have become so desensitized to these things that some people think it's funny to go and make a mockery of that or to make jokes about that because they think it will give them clout on social media, or it will get them clickbait or engagement, or people will think that they are unique in their perspective when in reality they are evil human beings. And I pray that none of you out there had any of those feelings yesterday or experienced any of that. And I hope that we're all decent human beings that recognize that there is now a wife and 2 little girls that don't have a husband and don't have a father anymore, and will never have that back. And that was taken away because somebody out there and people out there don't think that you're entitled to having your own opinion, and they don't think that you should be able to speak freely. They don't think that you should challenge the status quo. They don't think you should ask the tough questions, and have a debate, because that's what we need more than ever. I think with a lot of places in this society is we just need to talk through things, and we need to have those conversations. And there's a lot of people out there that don't want those conversations to be had. So I will leave it at that. I pray for Charlie Kirk's family. I don't care what you thought about him or his politics. He is a human being that was assassinated yesterday at 31 years old, and now has a wife and 2 children that will never get to see him again. And if that doesn't break your heart, and that doesn't get you to stop and think about what's important in your own life today, then I pray for you as well. And of course, today is also the 24th anniversary of another act of senseless violence, and the September 11th attacks on the World Trade Center in New York City. And it's, I know it's a hard day for a lot of people, and we thank all of the first responders, all of the veterans, all of the active duty military that are out there that protect our country and give us the freedoms and keep us safe so that we can live the lives that we live, even in the face of violent acts such as that, and the things that happened yesterday up in Utah, or things that have happened recently in Minneapolis, and other places around the country here recently. It's unfortunate that we have to go through those things, but first and foremost, we do thank and appreciate those that sacrifice their lives so that we can live our own lives. And I pray that we don't lose sight of that today. I know it's a tough day for a lot of people with the anniversary of September 11th and that coming on the back of what happened yesterday. But I don't want to get political with it. I don't want to tell you which way to lean because I don't care. Right? Be a good person at the end of the day. I have my views on things. You'll have your views on things. I have friends that we have completely different views on things. But at the end of the day, are you a good person? How do you treat other people? Is ultimately what deems your character, and that's going to deem how I personally view you as a human being. And I pray that today a lot of people take a look in the mirror and remember what's important and take a look at themselves, and you find some time in your hearts to pray for the people that lost their lives 24 years ago to a terrorist attack in New York City and other locations around the country. And I pray that you have found the time to pray for Charlie Kirk and his family after what happened yesterday, and somebody had their life taken too early on. So that is my piece. I just wanted to get out there and say that. I don't know if you have anything to add, Damian, but if not, we can talk about some football.
No, I think you hit the nail on the head because I think when you look at just the way that the world is now, it's kind of eye opening that people can't just agree to disagree and still be a human. Now, whether you agree with what he spread or again, I don't think anybody should be assassinated for things that they say. Because to me, I look at it from this perspective. He was having conversations. Like he was a guy that whether you believed in what he believed in, fine. If you didn't, fine. He didn't. I don't think he necessarily treated anybody different. He just didn't agree. And to your point, like I don't think any child should live without their father and actually witness their father being assassinated. I personally didn't agree with a lot of things that he said, but I didn't think that he deserved to lose his life over it. I don't think anybody should deserve to lose their life over things that they believe in. And again, like I'm with you. I don't ever want to get too political on certain things, but the guy was 31 years old. And it's really eye-opening that, one, as we get older, we kind of realize that life is short. Life is precious. That man had a family. He had a wife. He had two extremely young children that, as they age, they have to live with this. They have to live with this without their father, because there is a source of empathy. Like I was raised, to love all, no matter. I could care less how you align politically, your sexual orientation. Like if you're a good person, you're a good person, and I will treat you as such. And yeah, he said some things that I don't necessarily agree with, but I never once thought that the man should die for things that he said. Because I look at the world from a lens of I've always felt like this, that I wish a lot more people could have grown up in a locker room environment. I've always thought like that because I've had teammates that I didn't necessarily agree with things that they would say politically, when it came to religion, when it came to certain things. But all I know is when we put on our helmets and our shoulder pads, we're working towards the same thing. Could care less. I'm like, hey, if you're a tight end, can you pick up that guy on the edge? Not once did it cross my mind like, oh yeah, he votes this way or she votes that way or things like that. Because to me, it's all about the fact that we live in a country where you can have these thoughts. You can have the freedom of choice. You can have the freedom of all of these things. And he exercised his First Amendment rights of free speech, and he stood on that. Now, again, you don't necessarily have to agree with everything he says, but it's not worth taking a life. It's not. He was at a college campus. Like, he was talking to the youth. He was talking to college students that align with him. And it's no different than, me and you doing our daily jobs day after day. There are a lot of people that don't agree with things that we say. It's perfectly fine. Not going to lose any sleep over it. Hopefully they don't lose any sleep over it. But when it comes to situations like this, I don't think assassination is a way of of life. I really don't. Like you know, just because you don't agree with some of the things that he says doesn't necessarily mean that you need to take a man's life. And you know, prayers to his family. Because again, he has two extremely young kids that have no father now. Like, and again, it just the world is lacking a sense of empathy. Of okay, again, we saw this in action. Like there are videos circulating of this assassination, and like you said, the fact that people can make fun of it or poke fun of it, it's just kind of we're losing we're we're losing the empathetic portion of society of like I don't care where you align politically. I genuinely do not care. But the fact that you can find joy in somebody being assassinated, that's more of a reflection of who you are as a person than anything that he has said ever. So I again, just prayers to his family. It's a senseless act of violence, and nobody should be killed for things that they believe in. So that's my piece.
So there you have it. We will get on with the college football conversation now. I know some of you, I apologize that some of you can't sacrifice 10 minutes of your morning to listen to something more important than college football because somebody's life was lost. And I know some people are upset that we're talking about it. And I'm sorry that you can't handle that conversation for a few minutes, but we will move on. And I just pray again for the family of Charlie Kirk and for all of the people that lost their lives 24 years ago in the September 11th attacks, that we honor their memories now for the 24th anniversary of that event on this day. More college football talk coming up. We'll talk Alabama, Auburn, and more this weekend next. 10:17. Welcome into Morning JOX here on your Thursday morning. Conrad Van Order, Damian Mitchell here with you until 7 o'clock when we will hand you off to McElroy and Kublick in the morning. So let's talk some college football now, as we've got a great slate of games coming up here in week 3 around not only the SEC, but the entire country. Got 2 games here in the state. Big ones for Alabama and Auburn. Alabama hosting Wisconsin on Saturday at 11 a.m. Auburn hosting South Alabama at 11:45 a.m. on Saturday. And we got some big injury news yesterday for the Alabama Crimson Tide, or some updates at least. So the good news first off, according to head coach Kalen DeBoer, Ryan Williams is expected to be a go for Saturday. So he will have missed the first game against ULM after suffering a concussion against Florida State, and he is expected to be back out there for the Alabama Crimson Tide. Going to be very interested personally in kind of how they do those different groupings at wide receiver, especially now with Latsier Brooks, him showing some flashes last week. I think, obviously having Isaiah Horton out there in his size and being able to use him to stretch the field is going to be very, very important. But it's hard not to get excited about the thought of, having Latsier Brooks in the slot and then having Jeremy and Ryan Williams on the outside, and what that kind of a grouping could look like as well. So we will see how Alabama holds or how they do that, what their game plan is for Ryan Williams. Is he going to be a full go? Is he just going to be, try to get him back in the mix and ready for Georgia? Or is he going to, be fully involved and be out there for most of the day? We'll have to see. But he is expected to play for Alabama on Saturday. Some bad news, Danny Lewis, he is going to be out for this game as well. So the tight end there been dealing with an injury that's, it's an undisclosed injury, so not exactly sure what the details are on that, but he's going to miss some more time still. And then you have 3 game time decisions. Now, I'll be honest, I would be shocked. I'd be shocked if more than one of these players played on Saturday, but who knows? Maybe all 3 of them will be a go. But you've got defenders Jamarian Latham and Tim Keenan. They're both game time decisions. And then Jam Miller, obviously RB1 there for Alabama. He's a game time decision as well. I guess there's 2 sides to that coin, right, Damian? Because on one hand, right, I know, and look, it's Wisconsin. They're a solid program. They're going to be good defensively. They're going to be good running the football. So having some help on the defensive front wouldn't be a bad thing necessarily. But I just, do you risk bringing any of these guys back for the Wisconsin game if they're not 100% healthy? Because if you hold them out for this game, well, you got to bye next week, and then you've got Georgia. So you've got an extra week of rest that you can give these guys if they don't play on Saturday. I personally would err on the side of caution, I think, in this circumstance. So I don't, especially with a guy like Tim Keenan, and you know how important he's going to be to that defensive front, and having a more invasive procedure a couple weeks ago. Like, I think I'd be taking it easy in a lot of these situations with these guys. But that's your update there. So 3 game time decisions: Jamarian Latham, Jam Miller, Tim Keenan. They're going to be game time decisions. Then Danny Lewis, tight end, he will be out this weekend, and Ryan Williams is expected to be a go for the Alabama Crimson Tide. So that's your injury update there from Tuscaloosa, Alabama. You had the Hey Coach show going on last night as well. Nothing, no crazy insights or anything in particular like that from Baumhauer's there yesterday, but it definitely feels like there is, and again, right, I think it's fair to question it, and I think a number of people probably still need to see it a couple more times before they're going to believe it, but there seems to be a similar mindset, a similar approach from the team this week as there was last week, right? And that was going to be the question was, all right, you did it against ULM. You heard Ty Simpson, some of the guys after the game, okay, yeah, we recognize that what we did today, that was great preparation, and we went out there and we executed on the field for 60 minutes, but now we got to carry that mentality forward every single week, right? You got to have that fresh mindset on Sunday of, it's a new week, it's a new game. How do I prepare the exact same way this week that I did last week? And if they can stack a few weeks like that together, then we might be looking at a little bit of a different team than we thought after the Florida State game. But certainly can take a step in their direction towards proving that on Saturday when they take on Wisconsin. So there's a number of interesting games around the SEC this weekend. And I think something that makes them interesting is we have a lot of teams now, Damian, that I guess coming into the year we would have viewed as the upper echelon teams maybe in the conference. And they have some question marks about them now. And I think a lot of them rightfully so. It's just kind of interesting that it feels like pretty much every team in the conference still has some questions that they need to answer here after just a couple weeks left in the season. Like Georgia, for example, right? I don't, in the last couple of years, this feels like maybe the most concerned that people have been with Georgia, or the most that people have said, oh, okay, well, maybe this isn't the Georgia team that won back-to-back national championships a couple years ago, right? They're still a very good program, obviously. Um, but I think maybe people starting to look at them like, oh, okay, maybe they're having a little bit of the Alabama effect, right? Where what have we seen with Alabama the last few years? They've still been a good program. They've still been in the conversation, but they're not making it to a national championship game every year or every other year like they did for pretty much Nick Saban's entire tenure, right? It's different now because there is more parity. You don't have as more depth. Guys are leaving in the transfer portal. And I think Georgia's just, that's kind of where they are right now. But I do ask for your opinion, Damian, on Georgia right now. Like, do you view them as being more vulnerable than they have been the last few years under Kirby Smart? Do you feel like this is, I think people forget last year going into the Tennessee game, right? Georgia had 2 losses. Like, you had lost to Alabama, you had lost to Ole Miss, and if you had lost that game, you probably weren't making the college football playoff. And then we saw a much better version of Georgia. So I just wonder, do you view this year's team as more vulnerable maybe than teams in the years past, or is it a little overblown at this point because it's so early in the season still?
Yeah, I think it's just early on. I think this weekend will kind of solidify where I'm at with Georgia because again, there's only so much you can learn from Marshall and Austin P. I think Gun. I would say the jury's still out on Gunnar Stockton, as far as just being the complete passer that I kind of expected him to be because of the pieces that they have at the receiver position. The fact that they're actually committing to running the football and having a little bit more success than they had last year with Frazier in the backfield. I think, yeah, they're kind of in the Alabama boat of, and I said it last season that you can't just roll your helmet out there and because you got the big G on there that people like the other team is already down 7-0. Like I think they've lost that quote unquote intimidation factor. Like I feel as though that teams like Tennessee, like Ole Miss last year, that they feel like, hey, if we're going to be at or near the top, we have to beat teams like Georgia. And we've seen them be in a couple close matchups a couple years ago with Auburn. I still think they're one of the better teams in the SEC, but it doesn't surprise me anymore if they were to lose because again, like Ole Miss last year was the more physical team in that matchup, so they can be hit in the mouth. And I mean, I'm kind of 50-50 on how this game is going to go for them this weekend.
Well, you got to ride with your boy.
Yeah, because I do think that Tennessee has improved. And for all the question marks that they had coming into the season through 2 games, it's, they haven't skipped a beat. They actually look better in certain areas. I think them missing 2 of their starting corners is something that Georgia should take advantage of, but also they necessarily haven't been as polished in the past game to make me feel confident that they're going to find a way to get it done on Saturday when you've had 2 inferior opponents and your past game hadn't necessarily lived up to the standard that we kind of expected coming into the season.
Yeah, and we will give our picks tomorrow as we do each and every Friday here during the football season. It's one of those things where it's almost like I would rather, just in terms of, making a prediction for that game when we do that tomorrow. I guess I'm still just with Georgia, right? Like, I would rather be wrong because I gave them the benefit of the doubt and I had to, take a step back and go, okay, maybe Georgia's not that team anymore, or this year's version of Georgia's not that team anymore, right? In the sense of just them handling their business essentially whenever their number is called. Because, I mean, we've seen this, right, in the last couple of years where there's been, you've had some games where Georgia maybe didn't look particularly great early on in the season. You remember the UT Martin game a couple of years ago. They had a Ball State game a couple of years ago where they didn't look particularly incredible to start off a season. We all remember the Kentucky game last year where they won 13-12. Like, it happens, and then typically what follows that is Georgia goes and plays, I guess, what we would consider a big boy team, and they smoke them. And that's kind of been the what their plan has been, and it's worked out quite well for them. So we'll see if that happens again this weekend against Tennessee. I do again. It does feel like just the feeling and talking to people that cover both teams this week for the shows. It feels like this is Tennessee's opportunity, right? Like it feels like they feel this is their opportunity to strike, right? Like if we're gonna get them, we're gonna get them now. It's kind of like Ole Miss a couple years ago when they played Alabama, right, with Jalen Milroe, and we all said, well, if Lane Kiffin's gonna get Nick Saban, this is gonna be the time, right? Well, he didn't get Nick Saban, so is this gonna be the time that Josh Heupel and Tennessee finally get theirs against Kirby and the Bulldogs? We'll have to wait and see. But of course, that's going to be one of the more interesting matchups that we have coming up this weekend. There's another game coming up that I do want to talk about and get some of your thoughts on it as well, Damian, because we haven't spent a ton of time on it. But we had a bunch of people yesterday. Hey, y'all going to talk about this game? Very interested in y'all breaking it down, and that would be Texas A&M and Notre Dame. So that is going to be a top 16 matchup because and Texas A&M's number 16. Notre Dame is ranked number 8, and that's going to be at 6:30 on NBC on Saturday night. But I think we should take a little bit of a look at that game. I know Damien had some thoughts yesterday on Texas A&M and maybe being a little too reliant on Marcel Reed. So we'll get some of his expanded thoughts on that and how that might come into play in this matchup because you've got a Notre Dame team that's trying to not start the season 0-2 after playing for the national championship last year. So a lot to break down, a lot to get to in this matchup. We'll talk Texas A&M, Notre Dame. We'll also get some of your thoughts on the weekend as well. 205-834-9450. That's how you get on the courtesy GMC text line. And we continue the college football discussion here on the Thursday morning edition of Morning JOX. 6:33 here on your Thursday morning. Conrad Van Order, Damian Mitchell here with you until 7 o'clock when we'll hand you off to McElroy and Kublik in the morning. Looking at some of the biggest matchups in week 3, spent some time talking about Georgia, Tennessee. Are the concerns for Georgia valid, or are we maybe overblowing what we've seen from the Bulldogs after games against Marshall and Austin Peay? Maybe they've been holding some things back, understanding that they were going to have some difficult matchups to start off their conference slate. And we will see on Saturday. But some other games that we want to talk to or break down for you as well. Also get your thoughts on the Courtesy GMC text line 205-834-9450. Like Jamie, who chimes in and says, y'all keep falling for Georgia ain't no good if you want to, but they're about to whoop some dog by 7. Roll Tide. All right. It's also funny. He just texted and said, I noticed y'all don't read my text anymore. Well, we just read that one, Jamie. So I hope that encourages you to keep texting in. I apologize. We appreciate each and every one of your texts that you send in each and every day, even if we don't get to read them on the air. Nick from North Birmingham, he says, I think for this week, Auburn fully utilizes the passing game. I felt last week was a little bit more of a vanilla offense. I would want to permanently establish the passing scheme this week before you get into SEC play against Oklahoma. Okay, yeah, and I wouldn't be surprised. I would think this week he would probably focus a little more on the passing game as well, because first off, you don't want Jackson Arnold taking hits that he doesn't have to, and particularly not this early on in the season. But also, it looks like the run game looks fine. I don't think anybody really has any questions about the running game. I think that a lot of it more so just has to do with the consistency, right? Because we've seen some good plays, some good throws from Jackson Arnold. We know how good the receivers are. It's just continuing to get those reps in, continuing to build that chemistry before they get into some of the more difficult games that are going to be on their schedule this year. This text comes in from Grumpy the bus driver. It says, I feel better about Auburn's intensity this year. Sylvester Smith has, with 2 to 3 big hits. Cam Coleman has a big stiff arm. Auburn's been soft for the last 3 or 4 years. Is that finally changing? They don't look soft to me through 2 games. We'll see. Maybe SEC play changes that, but no, they don't look soft right now. They certainly they look like they're fired up to go hit people, and they have done just that as they continue to be tied for the lead in sacks across the country. And they have been one of the better defenses in the SEC. There is no doubt about it. So we'll get to some more of your texts coming up here. If you want to send those in, 205-834-9450. But I did say we wanted to talk a little bit about this Texas A&M and Notre Dame game that you got coming up on Saturday. Again, that's going to be at 6:30 there in South Bend. And Notre Dame, as it stands right now, a 6.5-point favorite over Texas A&M. I'll tell you this right now, just starting off going into this game, if Jeremiah Love doesn't have a better game than he did against Miami, I think it's going to be really, really difficult for Notre Dame to pull out this win. Now, I know they were able to come back against Miami without that, and I know that C.J. Carr had a lot to do with that because he looked excellent down the stretch there for Notre Dame. But these are difficult games to start off with, right? Notre Dame still only played that one game against Miami that they lost, and now you're having to welcome in a Texas A&M team that I would say looks better than the team we saw last year, Damian, in College Station. And we all remember, granted, I know it was at Kyle Field, but that Texas A&M team gave Notre Dame everything that they wanted last year to start off, and Notre Dame barely got out of there with a win. So now, yes, it's at home. You get to play under touchdown Jesus, but you have a better Texas A&M team that's coming in, and I think a lot of that has to do with Marcel Reed and that offense and what you've got with Concepcion and Craver and some of those guys. And we know, you're looking really, really good at running back with Moss and what they have there in the backfield. I think Texas A&M is really, really good, right? And this is one of those games that this can kind of start to shift the narrative a little bit, right? Are you a real college football playoff contender, or are you one of those SEC teams that you're going to go 8-4, 9-3, probably finish in the top 25, but you're going to be on the outside looking in every year, right? Because that's the joke with Texas A&M is, you look at last year, right? They had the inside track to playing in Atlanta for an SEC title game with a month to go, a little less than a month to go in the regular season, and they clearly did not find themselves there, as we all remember from the Texas Georgia SEC championship game. So I think this is just a very interesting opportunity for Texas A&M. I feel like we're going to learn a lot about them, and but similarly for Notre Dame, right? Just some of the things that came up in that Miami game with how Miami was able to get out there early. It's impressive that Notre Dame came back, but I don't think you want to let this Texas A&M team get out in front early on. And if Marcel Reed is having a day like we know he's capable of having, and Jeremiah Love is still struggling a little bit like he was in the Miami game, I think this could be a pretty nice day for Mike Elko and the Texas A&M Aggies. So I don't know what some of your early thoughts on this matchup are, Damien.
I take the Sandra Bullock from the blind side approach. Run the dang ball. That's what I need Texas A&M to do. Because to me, maybe you're trying to get Marcel Reed comfortable on the front end by asking him to go out here and throw it 30 and 40 times. But you've got a stable of running backs that you should be able to just hand the ball off and limit Notre Dame's possessions. Because I'm with you. I think Notre Dame was better last year. And it was Mike Elko's first game where he really didn't know what he had
Mm-hmm.
to start the season off. It was kind of just feeling it all out. Well, now you know Marcel Reed is your guy. Understand that. And I understand that you have a lot of explosiveness out there at receiver that you want to give those guys opportunities in space. But I do think your offensive line and your running back room, like they're almost itching for like, hey, can we get some burn? Can we line up in the I formation? Can we line up in our, pistol sets and just run the football? Because I do think that they can establish a lot in the run game. And if one of your running backs get tired, you rotate another one in there that can continue to pound the rock. I do think defensively they got some things they probably need to iron out a little bit better. Just because you have given up some points to Utah State and UTSA. But I think when I look at Texas A&M, this game right here is going to kind of separate you, like at least make it believable
Mm-hmm.
that you're trending in the right direction. And a lot of that will be answered as we go through SEC play as well. But I think getting off on a solid footing and going on the road and beating a team that played for the national title last year, it does a lot more to kind of boost up the program and where they feel as though that they should be. And again, like I think Marcel Reed is a good quarterback. I do. I still think there's some things that he needs to iron out, and the utilization of his legs. Like he's been able to run the ball. He's shown that he's able to run the ball effectively. But I think that their identity is kind of in flux. And again, it could just be 2 games into the season. Kind of want to let Marcel know, like, hey, we believe in you, but when the going gets rough and it's time to finish some teams, we're going to lean heavy into this run
Mm-hmm.
thing, and we're going to need your legs, so we're going to have to slow it down a little bit. So I don't anticipate him throwing more than like 30 passes this weekend, because I do think they need to find some sort of stability and some sort of balance in truly attacking Notre Dame in the run game. And I mean, if you look at what Miami has success with, is between the tackles. And again, I don't think Marcel Reed is up there with Carson Beck, and I also don't think Carson Beck is amazing. I think he's a better quarterback. But I think the less that you put on Marcel Reed's plate, the better. And the looser he's going to play, the faster he's going to play. So I think that they need to establish something in the run game to limit Notre Dame's possessions and also make them feel as though, okay, we can dominate. And I think that's the direction that they need to lean to in this ballgame this weekend.
Yeah, I'm just curious a little bit about Notre Dame, right? Do you come out at not in desperation mode, but I mean, I think they realize, I mean, you don't play in a conference championship game. If you lose this game, I'm not saying they're totally out, because even if they go 10-2, I'm sure they'll probably still find a way in. But I mean, you need to win 10 games in a row if you want to make it back to a college football playoff, and you just played for a national championship last year. So a lot on the line for Notre Dame. Going to be very interested to see how they respond and just kind of their mentality going into the game. Is it a little bit of like, all right, it's week 2, but this is make or break. And certainly a difficult opponent coming in to face that. And similarly for Texas A&M, right? If you get this win here, are we looking at a Texas A&M team that people start to view as maybe a top 10 team in the country, and maybe they start to enter that upper tier, at least early on, of what we see from the SEC, where I think right now a lot of people would have LSU and Oklahoma, and after their impressive wins to come early on in the season here. So that's some of our thoughts on Texas A&M Notre Dame. You have so many great games, so many upset opportunities. I think that's what we're going to dive into more tomorrow, because we'll give you our picks, of course, but I think we'll dive into what are the more likely upsets in the SEC, because I mean you've got not only Texas A&M trying to upset Notre Dame, we've talked about Tennessee and Georgia, but you've got Florida, who just the roller coaster that the Billy Napier experience has been. I wouldn't. Would anybody be surprised if they went and somehow beat LSU this weekend in Baton Rouge? And you look at the USF game 2 weeks ago and go, "What the crap just happened?" Like, I don't think anybody would be particularly surprised by that. Same thing for Arkansas and Ole Miss, right? Who's going to be surprised if this is an absolute shootout and Arkansas wins 45-41? Now, I mean, that'd be a little bit of a surprise, but I mean, we've seen these two teams have some very explosive matchups here in the not too distant past. So there's a lot of opportunities for teams to make some noise this weekend. What about Wisconsin? What if they come down here and knock off Alabama? That would certainly make some noise as well. So a lot of upset stuff that we can get into tomorrow. But we see a lot of you chiming in on the courtesy GMC text line 205-834-9450. And we want to take some time to answer your questions, get your thoughts on the weekend, your thoughts on Georgia, Tennessee, Texas A&M, Notre Dame, and all of the other great college football action that you have coming up for you this weekend. And we will get to all that next on Morning Jocks. Well, welcome back into the Thursday morning edition of Morning JOX. Conrad and Damien here with you for a few more moments as we're going to get to your calls and your text on the Courtesy GMC text line as we get you ready for week 3 of the college football season. So let's start off. Let's go to Bob and Helena. Bob is fired up to talk some USF Bulls this morning. Bob, how are we doing?
Hey, I'm fine. Listen, I try to be objective in all I do, and I admit, I will tell you, I am not a South Florida Bull homer. But you cannot ignore and overlook what they've done. I mean, they whipped Boise State convincingly.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
They beat Florida, and no one's talking. I think Miami should be a team that's on upset alert this week.
I totally agree with that.
I mean, and no one's talking about them. And you got to get past the logo on the helmet, guys. In the conference, I mean, I think right now they're at the driver's seat in terms of group of 5. As far as being a real playoff contender, especially if they go and knock off Miami.
Oh yeah, I mean if they go and knock off Miami, I think you can pretty much write that in pen at this point that they would be because I mean they would have think about that, they would have 3 top 25 wins to start the season.
Weeks.
Yeah, in
exactly.
3 weeks. That's incredible.
Yeah, and I will tell you, full disclosure, I know someone who plays on the team,
mm-hmm.
but I'm not a South Florida fan. But I do plan to attend the UAB game in November when they come to Birmingham.
Well, there you go, Bob. Hopefully that'll be a big time.
Yeah, but okay. Thanks, guys.
Yep, appreciate the call, man. Yeah, no, I think that's definitely going to be that's going to be an interesting game. And again, I threw it out last week. I said, and we both took, USF plus the points. It felt like it was too good to be true that you were getting 16.5 points on that point spread for USF and Florida. Miami is currently a 17.5 point favorite over USF. Again, it feels almost a little too good to be true. Now, I do think Miami's better than Florida, so I think it'll be much more difficult for them to win this football game. But keep it within 17? Oh, absolutely. I think I feel pretty good about that one. So just something to keep an eye on, but we'll make our picks tomorrow. No doubt about it. But let's go to the Courtesy GMC text line where your texts are rolling in 205-834-9450. That's how we'll close out the show this morning. And somebody just chimed in. They say the South Florida quarterback looks good. That'd be Byron Brown. They say possible Heisman.
He's going to have to dig deep.
That's going to be tough, and I just don't know if he'll put up the numbers because, again, he's not going out there and throwing for, 350 yards and 4 touchdowns a game. And he's a fantastic player, and he does what they need to do, and he makes big plays when they need him to make big plays. But I don't know if he will be able to sustain that. But at this point in the season, yeah, he certainly should be in the conversation. There's no doubt about it this early on. But he'll be behind our boy John Mateer, who should be at the top of the Heisman conversation.
We were telling y'all this in June, July. Like, hey,
we tried.
We tried.
We absolutely tried. Let's see. Oh man, this is tough. Fanboy says if LSU, South Carolina, Georgia, Texas A&M, and Ole Miss all lose, who would be the top 3 teams in the SEC?
Jesus.
Golly. I mean, Tennessee, because they would have beaten Georgia. Oh, man. Are we talking about like Vanderbilt as a top 3 team? Is that what we're trying to get at here? Yeah, I don't even know. It'd be Tennessee, Oklahoma, and I don't know. Welcome back, Alabama, I guess. I don't know. Auburn. Put Auburn in there. Missouri. I don't know. Yeah.
Right.
That's an interesting conversation. We'll see if we if we have that discussion on Monday because all those teams lose, or a lot of those teams lose. Let's see. This person says, do you think Florida State could beat Ohio State, LSU, or Texas right now?
Right now?
I'm going to go
they wouldn't be favored in any of them.
No,
I think the one
I think I would feel best about them taking on LSU probably.
I was going to say Texas because if you can rattle Arch, he's probably had the lowest floor out of everybody else.
I agree with that, but their defense is
I think Ohio State's defense is.
And that was kind of my thing with Texas is their defense is really, really good. But LSU's defense has been good too. But no, I mean, I agree with you. They wouldn't be favored over anybody. I mean, Yes, I certainly think they could beat any of those teams because I think all of those teams still have question marks. I think Julian Saint and Arch Manning are still, works in progress. And I think, the LSU offense hasn't set the world on fire through 2 weeks either. So, but that would be an interesting matchup. That would be an interesting matchup. Appreciate that text there. Let's see. Jamie says, I've got Florida beating the Corn Dogs this weekend. All right.
That means Billy's keeping his job.
We'll see. Yeah, that would certainly mean that
top
he's
3 win.
Doing that. Let's see. Bobby says, LSU's going to put it together on offense this weekend and send Sunbelt Billy packing. Going to be one of those belt-to-ass games. Go Tigers. All righty. Teddy from Birmingham. Tennessee's going to win on a last-second field goal. Georgia dominates but doesn't close it out.
I wouldn't be opposed to that.
All right. Drake says, we just need to limit our penalties. That's how we lost the last game. Yeah, well, don't spit on guys. And you'd be a little bit better off there. So appreciate all of you chiming in. We appreciate your kind words. I know a lot of you have sent in your thoughts and prayers about Charlie Kirk and what we discussed at the beginning of the show. But we appreciate you bearing with us. We love college football. We love America. And we love you. McElroy and Kublik in the